She hasn't said it, and she won't. Not yet, maybe not for a long time, but something has shifted, and if you've been paying attention, you've already felt it, even if you couldn't name it. It shows up in the smallest places. The way she asks a question she doesn't technically need to ask. The way she goes quiet for a second too long after you say something that mattered. The way she remembers something you mentioned once, in passing, weeks ago, and brings it back like she's been holding it carefully this whole time. Most people think love is declared. They think it arrives like an announcement, clear and undeniable, delivered when someone finally has the courage to say the words. And sometimes it does arrive that way. But more often, love makes its appearance long before the words do. It leaks out, quietly and consistently, through behavior that says everything she isn't ready to say out loud. What most people don't realize is that the silence isn't indifference. Sometimes the silence is the loudest thing in the room. Stay with me here, because understanding what's actually happening beneath the surface of her behavior changes the entire way you read the relationship you're in right now. Think about what it costs a woman to say, "I love you" first. Not just the vulnerability of saying the words, but the specific kind of vulnerability that comes from saying them before she knows how they'll land. She has likely watched those three words fall into silence before. She has likely said them to someone who received them poorly, who used them as leverage, who suddenly had more power in the relationship the moment she showed how much she cared. She has learned from experience that nobody asked her to have, that love spoken too early can be used against you. So she doesn't say it, not because it isn't there, because saying it feels like handing someone a weapon before she knows what they plan to do with it. But love, real love, doesn't stay quiet forever. It finds other exits. This is where things become interesting. The first sign is almost too quiet to catch if you're not looking for it. She starts protecting your time, not hers, yours. She'll mention casually that she knows you have an early morning and she doesn't want to keep you up. She'll check before making a plan whether it conflicts with something you've already got going. She'll notice when you look tired and suggest wrapping up instead of extending the evening. Most people read this as consideration. It is. But it's a very specific kind of consideration, the kind that only happens when someone has started to think of your well-being as something they're quietly responsible for. When a woman begins organizing her own behavior around your needs without being asked, she has already made a private decision about you, even if she hasn't announced it. We'll come back to that thread in a moment. But before we go there, consider something most people overlook entirely. Imagine this. She's talking to you about something that happened to her years ago, something small, something that wouldn't come up in ordinary conversation. She's sharing it not because it's relevant to a topic or because it's an interesting story, but simply because she wanted you to know it. She wanted that piece of her history to exist in your awareness. This is not casual conversation. This is something deeper. People share their quiet, unremarkable personal history with very few people, not because it's secret, but because it only matters to share when someone's opinion of you has started to feel important. You don't tell just anyone about the small, formative moments of your life. You tell the people you're beginning to trust with who you actually are, rather than who you perform in public. The deeper truth is this: when she starts handing you pieces of her story that have no entertainment value, no particular humor or drama attached to them, she is showing you something she doesn't show most people. She is letting you inside the version of herself that exists before she edits herself for an audience. Now we move deeper, because the next sign tends to catch people completely off guard. She gets quieter when you're having a good time. Not withdrawn, not unhappy, but quieter in a way that happens when someone is trying to hold a moment still. You'll notice it if you're watching. She'll laugh, she'll engage, she'll be fully present, and then for a few seconds, she'll go somewhere else just slightly. Not away from you. Into the moment, more deeply than conversation can quite reach. People do this when they are aware that something is good in a way they don't want to lose. It's the internal equivalent of reaching for a camera when you see something beautiful, an instinct to preserve, to memorize, to hold the present moment in a way that will outlast the moment itself. When she goes quiet in happiness, she is documenting you. She is filing something away. What happens next is important, because this next sign is the one most men misread entirely. She starts having opinions about your life. Not in a controlling way, not with demands or ultimatums, but in the quiet, unprompted way that happens when someone's future has started to include yours without either of you formally agreeing to it. She'll notice that you seem drained by something in your routine and say something about it. She'll offer an observation about a decision you're working through, not because you asked, but because she's been thinking about it. Most men interpret this as interference or as her being opinionated, but there is something deeper happening here. You don't form opinions about the details of someone's life unless you've started caring about the direction their life is going. You don't notice the patterns in someone else's decisions unless you're paying the kind of attention that only comes when your own well-being has become quietly connected to theirs. When she starts having thoughts about your life, she has already stopped treating your life as separate from hers. She just hasn't told you that yet. But before we go there, the next sign is perhaps the most telling of all, and also the easiest to miss. She remembers. Not the big things, those are easy to remember. She remembers the small things, the name of the friend you mentioned having trouble with 6 weeks ago, the project you were anxious about that you only brought up once, the food you said you didn't particularly like, so she avoids suggesting it. The small moment when you were proud of something and she stores it, not because she wrote it down, but because she was listening in a way that records. Think about it. Memory is not passive. Retention is not automatic. The things we remember about other people are the things we were paying close attention to when they were said, which means we were already invested in the person saying them before they finished their sentence. When she remembers the texture of your small, everyday moments, she has been practicing a kind of sustained attention that is almost impossible to fake, because you can't decide to remember something you didn't care about when you heard it. The remembering is already evidence that she cared in the moment, which means she has been quietly caring about you for longer than she's indicated. Now we move to the deepest layer of this entire topic, because this is where the real understanding begins. The final sign is the one that precedes everything else. She argues with you, not combatively, not cruelly, but genuinely. She pushes back when she disagrees. She says the thing she actually thinks instead of the softer, more palatable version she could have offered. She respects you enough not to perform agreement. Most people assume that women who are falling in love become more agreeable, more accommodating, more careful not to cause friction. But the opposite tends to be true. A woman who doesn't care very much will often manage a conversation rather than inhabit it. She'll agree where she doesn't agree because the relationship doesn't matter enough to make disagreement worth the energy. A woman who is falling in love stops managing you. She starts engaging with you because she has quietly decided that you are someone worth being honest with, and honesty includes the inconvenient kind, the kind that risks friction because the truth is more important than the performance of smooth agreement. The deepest truth is this: she is not too afraid to fall in love. She has already fallen. What she is afraid of is being the one who arrived there first, alone, before she knows if you're following. Every sign described here, protecting your time, sharing her quiet history, going still in happiness, developing opinions about your life, remembering your small moments, trusting you with her honest disagreement, is the same sign in different clothing. They are all the same message, encoded in behavior rather than words. I have started to build something here in myself, around you, and I am waiting to find out if you're building too. And this reframes the entire original question. The question most people start with is, how do I know if she loves me? But that question places the answer somewhere outside yourself, in her words, in her declarations, in her eventual willingness to be vulnerable enough to say it plainly. The better question is this: am I paying close enough attention to the language she's already using? Because she is speaking, quietly, consistently, through the smallest and most reliable channels of human behavior. She is telling you something in every small act of protection, remembering and honest engagement. The only question is whether you are the kind of person who has learned to listen past the words, to the level where the real communication is already taking place. If this opens something for you, there is much more beneath the surface of how people speak love long before they say it, and what it takes to be someone who notices. Stay close. This understanding is only the beginning.